Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Fish. Before we get going, I just want to let you know that we have a very exciting guest on this week. Andy unfortunately was away and is actually furious he was away because he missed out on the absolute tornado of comedy that is Rhys Darby. You probably know Rhys for his roles as Murray the Manager on Flight of the Conchords, or as Nigel Billingsley from the Jumanji movies, or perhaps you listen to his absolutely brilliant podcast about the mysteries of the universe called The Cryptid Factor, which he hosts with his buddies Buttons and a doofus called Dan. But what you may not have seen, if you live in the UK, is Rhys playing his greatest role yet, Stede Bonnet, gentleman pirate, in the sitcom Our Flag Means Death. This is such a great series. It came out last year on HBO Max, but it's only just come to the UK on BBC Two, and it's all about the real-life story of Stede Bonnet, who decided to give up his entire life and become a gentleman pirate of the seas. He befriends Blackbeard, who's played by the absolute genius comedy director Taika Waititi, and you can watch it now in the UK on BBC Two every Wednesday at 10 p.m, or if you're impatient like me, just head straight to BBC iPlayer and you can watch the entire series in one bingey go. Anyway, it was so great having Rhys back on the show. You can find the previous episode in the Fish archives if you want to hear his first time here with us. Andy wasn't on that show either. Poor guy can't get a break. But we hope you enjoy it, and then make sure to watch Our Flag Means Death immediately afterwards. Okay, on with the show. Hello and welcome to another episode of No Such Thing as a Fish, a weekly podcast, this week coming to you from 4 mysterious locations around the globe. My name is Dan Schreiber. I am sitting here with James Harkin, Anna Tashinsky, and joining us once again, it is the return of our very special guest, Rhys Darby. And once again, we have gathered around the microphones with our 4 favorite facts from the last 7 days, and in no particular order, here we go. Starting with fact number 1, and that is Rhys.
My fact is that pirate Stede Bonnet invented the idea of walking the plank.
Ooh.
Dun, dun, dun.
That's a pretty big invention, I would say, in the world of pirating.
I don't use it in my day-to-day life. It's pretty niche, isn't it?
It's putting together two things that already exist, walking and planks. It's not like, he hasn't come up with anything new there, has he?
I know, but if you're even a child and you dress up as a pirate, one of the first things you learn in your entire life is that they walk the plank. I mean, he's what a legacy.
That's right.
Is it true, though?
Let's put it this way. It's more of a myth, really, that he came up with it.
That's fine. That's what we deal in.
It's a Dan fact, you know.
Yeah. Nice.
You know the show.
You know the show.
So,
Well, he might have done, right? He might have done. Some people say that he did.
I actually believe he did, because even though it's out there as a myth, I believe, knowing Stede as I do, playing the role of Stede for 2 seasons now, that he would have come up with it in reality, because the whole idea behind walking the plank is they blindfold the person and they make them walk it, and so then they get away with not being accused of murder because that person has killed themselves. The captain has said, all right, walk along that plank, will you? All the best.
Right.
And the guy's like, what? Hey, what's happening? Hey, what? Walk along here. Whoa, whoa, whoa. You know, you can imagine it as I'm describing it here. Oh, I've got a blindfold on. Where's this plank going? You know, and then
nice.
That's the shark.
Very good.
Yeah, so he wouldn't want to stab someone or shoot someone.
No.
He wants to do it, he wants to be slightly away from the action, right? And say, you did it yourself.
Absolutely, very uncomfortable with the idea of killing someone.
Why are you hitting yourself? Why are you punching
yes.
yourself? Why are you letting yourself get eaten by sharks?
Exactly. That's it.
Is that getting you into heaven? I was uncomfortable with killing people, so I just let them kill themselves. He's walking a fine line, isn't he, morally?
He's walking a fine plank for sure, but I think
Yeah.
I think that's the point. It's a moral issue, and so he can think to himself, oh, I didn't kill him. He killed himself. He walked off that plank that I designed. And it's quite an ingenious idea, really, to think that, especially back in those days, you could make someone kill themselves without you having to actually get your hands dirty.
Yeah. Which was, we should say, like a golden age of piracy. 1718, was it? He died?
Yes.
I think.
So 1717 to 1730 was the golden age. He was right in the middle of it.
Wasn't he very short-lived, really, as a pirate? For a pirate who is quite famous, It was quite a brief career, wasn't it?
2 years.
Less than that, I think it was
run.
like a year and a half.
I think we should just quickly précis this guy in his entirety. This was someone who was a really well-to-do character. He was living very rich. He had a wife. He had some kids. And then he just decided, as part of ultimately what was, I guess, a midlife crisis, or he was dealing with trauma of a quite difficult childhood, just left his family, bought a ship, and just said, I'm now a pirate, got a crew, named the ship the Revenge, and just started sailing. And he paid his staff, he paid the pirates. He was, as you say, a gentleman pirate with zero abilities.
Didn't he not tell the pirates that they were going to be pirates? I read somewhere that he kind of brought them on. He got all of these guys to be his staff. And then only when they were at sea, he said, oh, by the way, you're pirates. This isn't just a fun cruise. This is a...
That sounds like him as well. Knowing him, being in his shoes, absolutely, yeah. He definitely, he bought the ship. It was already called the Revenge, I believe. And he liked the name of it. And there was actually quite a common name for ships back then. And then, he installed, this is the really fun stuff. He installed a library on the boat. So he built a library because he loved his books. He wanted to leave home and leave his wife and life, but he didn't want to leave his books. Something you might do, Dan. So he brought his entire collection of his books and put them on the ship.
I reckon, Dan, you would go being a pirate with your books, of course, but also probably your Ben Elton collection.
Absolutely. Well,
your signed, everything signed you've got in your house would come with you.
Yeah, I would need memorabilia to sort of, wow Blackbeard with, Yeah, no, actually, Ben Elton did, I think, actually hold this particular bit of tissue.
Really? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I was actually going to say it was pretty hard on his wife with the book stealing. Not only has she lost her husband, but he's nicked all the bloody books. But actually, in your case, Dan, it would be quite a relief probably for Fenella.
Yeah, it'd be like the ultimate Marie Kondo or whatever that book was called. It's like, step 4, make your husband a pirate. lose all.
Thank God.
Yeah, and so in the series as well, there's the relationship, the fact that he, in real life, meets Blackbeard, the most famous of all the pirates. And what's crazy as well is I assume Blackbeard must have existed for a long time, but he had a 2-year run as well. That was it.
Yeah.
Blackbeard's pirating years were 2 years.
It's amazing.
You lived pretty fast and loose as a pirate, didn't you? It probably wasn't the safest line of work to go into, if we're being honest.
No.
No.
They were like the Liz Truss of pirates, weren't they, those guys? Literally.
That's the most flattering comparison Liz Truss has ever got. But yeah, Blackbeard and him had quite a weird relationship. It's kind of the relationship to a needy loser and the real cool guy of the open seas, because Steed wasn't that good at pirating, especially at first, was he?
No. So, I mean, there's the reality through the knowledge we have from various accounts and history, and then there's the, obviously the fictional version, which my show is. So, without getting too confused about which is real and which isn't, because the real reports, are sketchy at best as well. But when you look at it, it kind of makes sense that, something happened between the two of them, even if it was just a friendship. Blackbeard was fascinated by this guy because he looked glorious in his outfits. He had these little winker-picker shoes and glorious coats and various things like that. He was a fancy man, and Blackbeard must have gone, what the hell are you doing in this job? Because, they were all desperate. They didn't want to become pirates. That was like the only life they had to go into because of their circumstance. And so here's this guy who's like, I want to be part of this too. And he's absolutely not supposed to be there. And he was wounded. And I think instead of just killing him or getting rid of him, I think there was a massive fascination. I think maybe if you look at Blackbeard wanting to see the other side of how the other side lives, like probably a lot of people did back in those days, you're either ridiculously poor and haven't got anything going on, or you're the aristocracy, and never the twain shall meet. And so when they do, I think that's when you've got this really interesting, how can I become you, or how can I learn from you, or how can I steal your ideas to make me better? Wow.
So he was like the Louis Theroux of the pirating world. Spending a few weeks observing, getting all the info.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Perhaps, because he could have just killed him. He could have just got rid of him. I mean, this guy back in history was not... He's not as portrayed as capable as I am in the show, you know.
And that's saying something.
But I reckon this is a really interesting way of doing history, right? Because we don't have much information about Stede Bonnet. We have little bits here and there. But Rhys, you've lived as him for 2 years in the show, pretty much. And I reckon you've got a really good insight into what he might have been thinking and what he might have done and stuff.
Yeah. Why the hell he did it. That's always the great mystery, isn't it? It's always portrayed as this huge midlife crisis, which makes sense. It's the fantasy that every 8-year-old has that we grow out of by the time we're 12.
That's not midlife, is it? 8 years old?
I feel like when you have a midlife crisis, you revert back to those tragic fantasies you had as a child that are unrealistic. And it was portrayed in, you know, the famous book of Pirates, which is where we get basically all of our pirate knowledge, by a mysterious person called Captain Charles Johnson, who was written a few years later. And his portrayal, which is often what is repeated, is that he was trying to bear the awful situation of having a nagging wife. But yeah, Rhys, you've been him. Why did he do it?
I really hope that you, James, and Anna are subtly trying to get Rhys to sort of channel Stede.
Yeah.
And he comes through now.
That's what I'm hoping.
Rhys is no longer here. And
We get an English dandy.
Stede is just on the show.
Look, I definitely think there was a midlife crisis situation going on, if you look back at the accounts. But also he had this life that he didn't necessarily want. He was born into aristocracy. And at that time, piracy had just kicked in, and it was this ridiculous, adventurous, out at sea life that was pretty much the opposite of what he's doing. And he's never even been to sea, by the way, this guy. So he's imagining, oh, wow, what would that be like? And of course, anyone who's really intensely into their book reading has a great imagination. And I think he just one day went, look, I've actually got the means to change this. And he probably had one massive fight with the wife that he wasn't really getting on with, and went, right, that's it, I'm out. And in the middle of the night, you know, he sorted this out and just took off on a whim. And I think that, you know, he probably thought that he had the means to get away with it, because he was a chiefly person. He was someone who was sort of high up there. And so he probably didn't even imagine he was going to get into trouble.
It certainly seemed like he didn't.
It's confidence, blind confidence.
Yeah.
I once walked a plank in a virtual reality video game.
Okay.
Right.
And this is what I was thinking about, how these guys were blindfolded. So we weren't blindfolded when we did this, but you're walking the plank on the top of a massive building. And then the idea is you got to the end and then you jumped off, and then you were in virtual reality and you thought you were dying. And then you kept falling, and then you hit the floor and you absolutely shit yourself because you thought you were dead, but actually you're in virtual reality. But what I thought was it was more scary because I could see what was happening, whereas these guys were blindfolded.
Yes.
So is the idea that they wouldn't know when they're getting to the end of the plank, they'll just keep walking and that's it? Or
yes, well, let's have a chat about that. I mean, I think, why do they need to be blindfolded? For a start, because, you know, they know they're out at sea, they're on a boat. All right, step up onto the edge here. Oh, I can feel that this is the edge of the boat. No, it's not. No, you're going into one of the rooms. We're going to have a little party. No, I can feel the wind in my face here. No, it's fine. Walk, just keep walking. Just there's a plank there. Oh, right, yes. Oh, well, this is going out into the sea, isn't it? No, this is it's actually a bridge towards the bar. I've got a cocktail here waiting for you, Larry. Okay. It was very windy. Yes, well, we're all blowing. Blow. Oh, that feels like normal wind, not you. You know what your wind's like, Larry? Cheeky bugger. Just keep walking down there, mate. And I know I've really got into that, but I think
I've forgotten what we were asking.
But I actually think that's true, because it means you couldn't have like surprise parties on a boat, could you? Because every time you put a blindfold on and you're walked into a room
fucking terrified,
and they say it's a party.
Yeah,
I think that's a good point. We've got to. In history, there's been no surprise parties on pirate ships for that reason. Happy birthday! The shots are real quick.
It actually doesn't make any sense that they would be able to walk a plank while out in the rough seas blindfolded and shaking
yes.
with nerves. I mean, you fall off. You don't get to the end of that plank, do you?
No, such a good point.
You're falling off straight away.
Also, is this where we got the diving board from?
Yeah.
Yes, I was just thinking that too.
Imagine the cockiness of someone that you've sentenced to death who walks blindfolded to the end of the plank, jumps off and does a triple backward somersault as he goes in.
That's amazing.
That's a legend.
What a death. What a death.
Yeah. Stop the podcast.
Stop the podcast.
Hi all. Just wanted to inform you that this week we're sponsored by Emma.
Indeed. Emma are an amazing mattress company. So many great things about them. One of them is that they give you up to 200 nights trial sleep. And what that means is after 199 and a half nights, if you've decided this mattress is not for me, you can just return it.
That's right. If you are indeed the princess from The Princess and the Pea, you are absolutely free to do that. I'd be surprised if you did, because it's probably the most comfortable night's sleep you'll ever get. I recently swapped my own mattress out for an Emma mattress that was in our spare room. It is so great to sleep on. It's made with German engineering, the best engineering, let's face it. It comes with a 10-year warranty and offers free delivery.
Absolutely. So if you want to be Prinzessin und die Erbse with the German version of Princess and the Pea, then what you must do is go to emma-sleep.co.uk/fish. And when you use the offer code FISH, you'll get an extra 5% on top of all the other deals that they have on the website. And that applies to all the products.
Yes, so to get your 5% off on top of all other offers, go to emma-sleep.co.uk/fish and use the offer code FISH.
Okay, on with the podcast, all.
On with the show.
Okay, it is time for fact number 2, and that is James.
Okay, my fact this week is that goats like it when you smile at them, but only if you approach them from the right-hand side.
How can that possibly be true? Why could it
It was
be true?
the findings of a study in 2018 at the Buttercup Sanctuary for Goats in Kent. And what they did was they put photos of humans, men and women, black and white, and they put one on the left and one on the right, and one of them was smiling and one of them wasn't, and the goats always went to the smiling one, but only when it was on the right hand side. When it was on the left hand side, they couldn't give a shit. They would randomly go to one or the other, but when it was on the right hand side, they always went to it. And two things here. One, not many animals care whether humans are smiling or not. We know that dogs do, we know that horses do. That's because they're domesticated animals, and this is one of the first other animals that we found that actually cares if humans smile. And the other thing is that perhaps why are they only bothered about the right hand side? Well, it could be the way that their brain processes things. So maybe they're processing emotions on one side of the brain or visual things on one side of the brain. We're not really sure.
Why do they use a black and white photo? Can you not fork out in the budget for colour photography?
Do they see colour? Do they see colour?
Oh, that's a great
That's
question.
a great question. Well, Rhys, you're from you know goats almost as well as you know Steed Bonnet. Do you think they see colour?
I would like to think they do, especially my ones. When I turn up to feed them, I always come in from the left, and they're smiling. I'm smiling, but I think, but they.
You always make sure to smile? That's part of it?
I'm just imagining that
right.
I must be smiling because I'm happy to see them. I don't see them a hell of a lot because they're in New Zealand, but I spend time with them when I'm there, of course.
They are emotionally intelligent. I hadn't realised that they were to this extent. So they did a study where researchers recorded goats making certain noises when they were happy and noises when they were sad. So this did involve the researchers making the goats happy and sad. So they'd make them happy by sort of giving them food, and then they'd make them sad. And this is sort of like really minimal level of sadness. They'd isolate them from their herd for 5 minutes, or they'd get a goat to watch another goat eat when that goat didn't have much food.
Oh, wow.
Apparently
But I know goats, and that is very sad for them.
that's tragic.
The two things they
Torture.
really care about are being together and eating.
Oh, really?
That's it.
Oh.
Yeah, that's it. And to have fun, they climb. So they love to get on top of things, and they love running around, but they'll always much prefer to be doing all that sort of stuff together.
Okay, well,
And,
maybe this was like torture for them, perhaps.
It
And
would have
also,
been, yeah.
also, Anna, I've been in a restaurant with you when one of us has got our food and yours hasn't quite arrived yet. And the look on your face.
I make some pretty weird
Yeah.
noises. I can't deny that. Okay, I make some weird goat-like bleating sounds. Anyway, the noises that goats make are pretty much indistinguishable to us when they're happy and sad in those situations. Except probably, Rhys, if you own goats, you pick up on it. But if you play those sounds to their fellow goats, just audio recordings, their heart rates will stay normal and they'll be all chilled out when they hear the happy sounds. But when they hear the almost identical sounding anxious sounds, then their heart rates kind of shoot up. So they're feeling this empathy on behalf of this other goat.
Wow.
Yeah.
Rhys, have you ever, this is a leaning into a myth here, but I'd just be curious, have you ever dipped your feet into salt water and then let goats lick your feet?
No.
No? Okay.
Why would he?
But I have taken the goats for a walk down on.
That's the thing. I know you've got a
and
beach near
we've
you.
Been through salt water.
Yeah. So, okay, next time you're back in New Zealand, give it a go, because I'd be curious to hear whether or not this hurts. This was a sort of myth that's been in books for a long time, and possibly it was tried once or twice, who knows, where the ancient Romans were said to have used a thing called tickle torture. And the idea was that you would get someone, you would soak their feet in salt water, and then the salt would then be licked by a thirsty ghost. Ghost? That took a turn.
Oh my god.
They love salt, don't they?
Oh no, I just checked my notes down and all this is actually about ghosts. All this stuff I've been saying about goats. It's ghosts like it if you smile
Yes,
at them.
always approach a ghost from the right-hand side. Yeah.
Now it's making sense.
Yes. So apparently that's if a goat licks your feet because they have really rough tongues, that the torture, and because they're so thirsty and the salt makes them thirstier, they keep licking and then they rip your feet off, and that would be a method of torture back in
Rip your feet off. Their tongues aren't made of teeth.
No, sorry,
are
they would slowly like a lollipop lick their way through your feet.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I tend to not let their mouths too close to my body bits.
Okay.
Because they have teeth and everything, and they're always wanting to nibble. And so they nibble on my clothes, they pull my garments, and I certainly can't see myself getting my naked feet out and dangling them in front of their faces with salt.
Do they then? Another question about your goats. Do they urinate on themselves and each other, or themselves? So first of all, they'll wee all over themselves to attract a female, and it looks kind of cool. Billy goats shove their heads right between their legs because they want to wee in their beards, because I guess that gathers up the smell better. And they wee all over them, and then they will go to the lady who can tell that he's up for a shag, but then he tests her urine as well to make sure that she's eligible, to make sure that she's actually on heat. And so she will squat down and he'll put his head between her legs, and then she'll wee all over him. And then they do this, the curl up the lips, the flame and response, which is where if you see a goat expose its lip, like curl up its top lip, it's got all these receptors in it. Yeah, James is doing it right now. It's a very attractive look, actually. It's got receptors in it that pick up whether the urine has the right hormones in it that says this woman is ready to be fertilized by you. And so it's very, very wee-based courting process. It's sexy stuff.
I know nothing of that because I only have boy goats.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, when you have both, you're into mating, and if you've got females, then you're into milking. So I've only got male cast-offs, which the boy goats are only good for either meat or pets.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So they're never aroused, your goats. They never need to warm themselves.
They've never aroused, and I've never even seen them wee.
Oh, they must. They must.
No,
wee.
never seen them wee. Mind you, mine are pedigree, so I don't think they do.
Yeah, good point.
I've got to be honest.
I've heard that about certain breeds. They just explode with urine at their death, don't they? It's a Henry VIII situation.
Or sometimes I see them hiding, and I come to the pen and I think, you having a wee, are you? And then I can hear, don't come in here. I'm in here. and that kind of thing. And so I wonder, there's probably something happening there. And then they just come through. Oh, hello, Dad. What's going on today?
Dad.
Do they call you Dad?
Yeah, they call me Dad.
Dad.
I didn't see you coming, Dad. You came on the left-hand side, did you? Yeah. Sorry, I was going to check on you guys. Do you want to go for another walk down to the beach? Oh no, I'm fine. Alexander's just behind the pen there. Don't go going around there. He's just doing something. Don't worry about him.
Are you sure you've got goats, not sort of pantomime actors in goat costumes?
Here's an interesting thing about goats. So you said like pedigree goats. You can get them. You can get really good goats, especially for milking and stuff. And in order to get those, you might need a stud. So you might need a really good male goat who's going to have sex with lots of females. But the thing is that they can only have so many. They can only have sex so many times, right? There's only so many hours in the day that you can do that. And so recently they've come up with a new way of... Basically what they do is they put some genes into a goat which changes its testicles, so they're effectively the testicles of another goat.
What?
And so this goat, which isn't the normal stud, can have sex with a female, and the offspring will be the offspring of the original stud, even though the stud's just at home having a coffee.
Oh my God. Really?
That's like The Handmaid's Tale, kind of, where you think you're shagging one person, but you're actually shagging the more fertile person. It's actually a less dark version of The Handmaid's Tale, without the feminist and dystopian undertones.
The Milkmaid's Tale.
Exactly. I wonder if that's quite demoralising, though, for the goat who the person said, your testes aren't good enough, we're just going to shove these other blokes on you who you've always been intimidated by anyway.
I don't think they even know they're goats.
Yeah, probably true.
Goats? Of course they know they're goats.
Do they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Very good.
Because I've tried to take them out. You know, we've gone into town and my guys have gone, no, we can't. We're goats. We can't go in there. We're not going to. We won't be allowed in there, Dad. Can you take the blindfold off me? No, just you'll be fine, Alexander. We're going into town. I can sense there's someone coming up to me on the left-hand side. I can sense it.
He's asking me for ID, Dad. What do I do?
Dad, I don't have any ID. I'm a goat. I told him I'm a goat. Look, I'm sorry. He doesn't know he's a goat. If you could just let him... I do know I'm a goat, Dad. I told you. And get this blindfold off me.
I saw a photo earlier today of it was a tree which looked like it was growing goats. There was like an apple tree.
Yeah.
There was like 30 goats.
They love
But
climbing
they were just
trees.
all sitting in this tree, and I didn't think they had the dexterity to do it.
Hadn't you? Yeah, they're big on... Yeah.
They do like climbing trees and they like climbing, but often if you see those photos, some places will
Fake it.
just fake it for tourists, basically.
Right.
They'll kind of tie the goats into trees and then say, look, all these goats have climbed this tree and they're all free will. Because at the end of the day, they need the tourists to come and take the photos, but the goats aren't going to do what they want. Sometimes they'll climb and sometimes they won't.
right.
And so they kind of fake it sometimes.
Oh, that's the shocking reality of tourism in some of these places.
I'm
But
afraid so.
the other thing is there's a theory that goats used to be birds. And that's,
Sorry.
that's why they're in the trees a lot, because they are reverting back to their previous life.
Is that are there scientific papers written supporting this theory, or is this just some bloke in your local pub?
No, I'm pulling it up now.
Okay.
Here it is. Scientific theories.
Yeah.
Goats used to be birds. Here it is. Goats used to be birds. There it is in bold letters.
Absolutely incredible.
Wow, that's 2 pages, and it's signed at the bottom there.
2 pages. There's your evidence.
They believe they're flying. That's the closest thing they can get to going back to their old life as a bird, by flying, and then they'll end up in the trees. And you'll often hear them twerking.
Twerking.
No, twerping.
You should see him
Come
twerk.
on.
He's amazing.
What's the actual word that birds make?
Tweet?
Tweeting,
Oh,
chirping.
tweeting.
I think
Chirping.
think
That's where I'm
you've-
getting confused.
you mash those
I'm
two
confusing.
together.
Yeah, I'm mashing those two together and coming up with twerking.
Yeah.
I
I think that's how
Chirping.
twerking was born, actually, wasn't it?
That's
Originally,
how
the
it was
dance move.
created. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's absolutely amazing. Thank you for sharing that fact. Another goat fact,
Yeah.
which isn't as amazing as that, but is true, is that we've never talked about myotonic goats. And I think they always deserve a mention. The myotonic fainting goats.
Oh.
We've mentioned on this podcast. They're a breed in Tennessee that basically have an anomaly in their genes where when they panic, if they're approached from the left, for instance, or not smiling, or there's a loud noise, something like that, then they try to escape. But what this does is contracts their muscles so they stiffen up completely and then just kind of fall over onto their side. And it is quite comical to see. If you've never seen it,
It's bizarre. I've seen videos of that. Yeah.
it's very odd.
Do we know
isn't it?
why it happens, Anna? Because it feels like it would die out quite quickly.
Well, I think it was only died in, as it were, quite recently through breeding. So I don't think it would have any evolutionary purpose. And you're right, in the wild, they probably wouldn't survive very long.
Right.
But they are now bred from this same batch that have this.
I think
genetic anomaly.
Steve Bonnet suffered from that same gene anomaly. Just sort of stiffening up and fainting at the sight of any sort of danger.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And he overcame it.
Did he?
Well, how
Yeah,
did he
just-
overcome it?
Well, just really sort of, getting with a really tough pirate and learning how to proper be a pirate. I think goats, if you put those little fainty ones in with, some real hardcore, proper rustic goats, they'd probably learn the ways and would become more goaty,
Yeah.
and less fainty.
Billy Goat Blackbeard takes them under their wing.
Yeah, that's right.
Because what you can also do is you can deprive them of water, which bizarrely cures this problem.
There are other problems if you don't give them water, aren't there?
So it's a very fine balance to strike. But they're kind of useful now because myotonia is also a thing in humans, like sudden muscle seizures. Some people have that. And
The jumping Frenchman of Maine, are they called, or something like that? I remember. reading about them.
really? I didn't know.
think
I
so.
don't know about them. Are they a
Yeah,
group
I
of
think
myotonics?
there was a group of French immigrants in Maine, I think,
Mm-hmm.
and they had this kind of thing where as soon as you shocked them, they would just faint.
Oh, really?
Oh.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
How long are they stiff for? How long do they, does it just slowly wear off?
Yeah, I think so. It's the goats.
Yeah, they just kind of wake up, don't they, the goats?
It's like a faint. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen the
It's a-
videos.
It's bizarre.
We've all seen the videos.
It's bizarre. Imagine
on
if
YouTube.
people did do that. It's a very bizarre trait, isn't it?
Yeah, it would make the start of the 100 metres not much good, would it? Because as soon as the bang goes off, everyone just faints. It would be a race to see who came round the quickest.
Yeah.
That's why the Goat Olympics have never taken off. Yet we call the best in the world the goats. What's going on?
Yeah.
Okay, it is time for fact number 3, and that is Anna.
My fact this week is that Tintin's hair originally lay flat on his head until it got blown upwards in an early comic strip and it never came back down.
Wow.
And that's why he's got that famous stupid quiff.
I think it's
Stupid.
brilliant.
It's
Cliff.
iconic.
How dare you?
Yeah. What are you talking
everyone's
about?
entitled to
You're
their own opinion.
stupid.
Okay. Actually, Rhys is sporting a sort of half Tintinian quiff at the moment, so should be careful.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was not mentioned anywhere in the comic. It's just the very first Tintin comic that was released. This is in January 1929, and it was Tintin au pays de Soviet, Tintin in the land of the Soviets. And about sort of 10 pages in the version I was reading, he drops out of a tree, much like a goat, and falls into a convertible car sitting underneath it deliberately and drives the car away. And in the next plate, you see his hair pushed up, and then you follow the story through, and it just never drops again. So
Wow.
weird. Did they do it on purpose? Was this a subconscious thing? We'll never know.
We'll never know.
Well, I actually have the book here, of course, because
Oh
I'm
wow, you do.
big Tintin fan,
cool.
and I looked at this, and yeah, you're right. We can have a look here. I think it's, as you say, around page 10. Yes.
Let's have a
this
look.
is this is an audio format.
Yeah, but you've all got imaginations at home. We want you to imagine Tintin climbing up a tree.
So in
Climbing
this
up a
one here,
tree.
see
Yeah.
his quiff here is forward.
Yep.
Okay. He climbs up the tree, and then there he is. For those at home that are listening to this, you guys can hear him here jumping
now he's in the car and it's flicked to the back, and it's because of the wind of the car, and you can all hear that in that panel there.
Yeah.
But that's pretty amazing that it happens midway through a comic. It's not like the start of a new comic. It's like Hergé, the creator and the illustrator of Tintin, did that in one panel and went, "Oh, that looks good."
I think
and
so.
Just went, well, I'll
That's
just
what I
leave
think
that.
happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please
And do you know what's amazing about what you just showed us? There's a little something in that comic which is what absolutely exploded Tintin into the masses of Europe. And it was a very specific thing that you might not have noticed as we were all just looking at these cartoons.
Well, did you notice at home? Anyone? Write in if you spotted the moment that Dan's describing.
I mean, the four of us is what I'm talking about. And what it was is that this is 1929. This is the same year that Popeye was invented, by the way. So this is, and you know, it's years before Superman and Batman. This is really old school comic books. What they have in these drawings are speech bubbles.
Right.
And Europe did not have speech bubbles at this point in their comics. They were over in
Did we
America,
not?
but they were a completely new idea to certainly Belgium and let's say surrounding countries. I don't know about the UK specifically.
Luxembourg,
but possibly Luxembourg. And
the Netherlands.
The Netherlands.
Yeah.
Let's go there. Yeah. And I read a great biography, or rather, I read a few pages from a great biography by Harry Thompson about Tintin, saying that basically his words in these speech bubbles were treated as if they were carved on tablets of stone. They became quotes and they became something you would remember as a result of these speech bubbles. And that is why Tintin exploded.
So, sorry. Are we claiming? I would say at the moment, for me, the invention of the speech bubble is up there with the invention of the concept of walking a plank. I don't know if it's getting kind of
He didn't invent it.
Einstein.
He didn't
Well,
invent it.
exactly. He didn't even invent it, and it's not.
No.
It didn't independently appear, did it? It wasn't like, oh wow, how weird they've got these in America. Presumably, they just read a comic in America and thought, well, let's start doing that. Is that right?
No, but do you remember when OK Go did their first video on treadmills and you barely even heard the music? You were so busy watching
Yeah.
this innovative video.
Yes.
That's what it was.
Couldn't
it was
tell
like
you what the song is.
Exactly.
God.
Oh, the
Exactly.
treadmill song.
What?
The treadmill song, exactly.
What a
That's-
relatable for future generations comparison.
Well, you know, in like 300 years, everyone will be talking about, you know how we all do those treadmill dances now?
Yeah.
You know how everyone does them? Well, guess who did them first?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That book, by the way, the Tintin in the Soviet countries or whatever it is, I have that as well. But if you go to the Tintin shop in London, they'll only sell it to you under the counter.
No.
Yeah, so I went to, it was my tin anniversary, and I thought I'd buy my wife some Tintin stuff. And she's Russian, so I thought I'd buy the Soviet Tintin book. And I went, and it wasn't anywhere. And I didn't really know enough about Tintin that I knew it existed, but I assumed that it was maybe really rare. And I said, oh, do you have this book? And they went, yeah, well, we keep it under here now. And since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, they don't put it on display anymore in that
No way.
shop. Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
So weird.
That's
So you
incredible.
felt like you were buying comic book porn. Is it quite exciting?
They gave me in like an unmarked paper bag.
Yeah.
Do you know what's crazy? So 1929 is when Tintin debuts. By 1930, the comic is so massive that Hergé was invited to meet the Empress, who was the ex-Empress, I guess, Zita of Austria-Hungary at the time. And when he arrived by train, and there was just huge crowds of people there to meet, not Hergé specifically, but Tintin, because they hired an actor to be Tintin, who was an unknown kid who didn't have the right color hair.
Oh,
And he
no.
was mobbed. And not only did he not have the right color hair, he also couldn't quite keep the quiff up. So Hergé had to keep this little,
no.
tin of oily grease, hair
God.
grease. Under
I
his
thought you were going to
armpits.
go something about Mary about it there, Dan, for a second.
Oh, Jesus.
Tintin had to ejaculate every 30 minutes,
Like those poor goats.
like the goats.
He had to
but
have someone
yes,
else's testicles implanted into him.
Exactly. Yeah.
Blistering barnacles, Tintin.
But yeah, so they came off this train, and Tintin, the kid, was mobbed, and he was ripped away, and Hergé had to go and chase him and bring him back. But it was like One Direction.
Yeah, right.
If you remember them.
Poor guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. And in fact, you said you gave a famous Tintin quote there, James. blistering barnacles.
Blistering barnacles.
Indeed.
It's Captain Haddock, right, who says that?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, frequently. And this leads to quite an interesting thing about translating Tintin into English, because obviously it was originally written in French. I was reading an interview with Leslie Lonsdale Cooper, and she was one of the two main translators of Tintin from French into English, and she was doing it for 30 years. But she said one of the great challenges is fitting the words exactly into the speech bubbles, because you get exactly the same images. But I don't, when you hear a French announcement on a tannoy and then you hear the English one, and the French one always goes on about 5 times longer. So I don't know how she was compressing that, but blistering barnacles was one of the things that she came up with as a translation of actually mi sabord, I think it was, in French, which means 1,000 portholes.
He's from Belgium, though, isn't he? So
Yeah.
But they speak
French.
They speak French. In
Yeah.
half of Belgium, they do. It's supposedly based on a Frenchman, wasn't he, Tintin? Robert Sexay.
Yes.
that's a good name.
It's a great name, isn't it? Robert Sexy. He was a French journalist, and apparently he looked a bit like Tintin. He went on adventures to the Soviet Union, to the Democratic Republic of Congo, and to the US in the same order that Tintin does those books. But Hergé always said, Tintin, c'est moi. So he always claimed that Tintin was based on himself, but we think he might have been inspired by various different journalists.
There was another theory that Tintin and all the characters were based on the family members of Hergé, and he denied it later in life. He said, no, it's nothing to do with them. But let me just quickly tell you about his family. There was his younger brother, Paul, who had a round face and a quiff. There was his dad, Alexis, who was a clumsy man who had a twin brother called Leon, who lived nearby, and the two of them would go for walks, and they would wear identical bowler hats and carry identical canes, singing in unison as they did. His dog Snowy, who originally had the name Milo in French, happened to also share the name. Who does have the name Milo in French, shares that name with Hergé's first girlfriend.
Yes.
But that's no.
Yeah.
A lot of people have suggested, are you saying something rude? But Harry Thompson points out that at the time it was considered to be a great crime if you were a young boy hanging out with the opposite sex. Certainly if you were depicting that in comics. And so the only way he could represent this person who was very fond of was to put her as a dog in there. Otherwise he would have gotten a lot of trouble.
What kind of weird excuse maker for the fact that Hergé put pretty much 0 women in all of his comics? Were you reading, we weren't allowed to include women in comic books back then. They had to be dogs. They had to come in disguise. He just didn't put any women characters in. It is a bit of a
They're hard to draw women, aren't they?
That's not true. What about Bianca Castafiore, the opera singer? She's a huge character in the
You're
in
right.
The book.
She's
a heroine as well. Yeah,
that's true. No, you're right. He had one. He had Bianca. That is true. And he did have the dog who maybe was based on his girlfriend. But also, weirdly, the person James mentioned, Sexer, he had a travel companion called Milou as well. So it might have been him.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. Have you guys read what is apparently the best Tintin? And I haven't read it. I'm ashamed to say. But Tintin in Tibet, people seem to say. I'm guessing. Have you read that, Rhys?
Yes. So that's my favourite. I mean, I've let people know that. I think I remember back. It might still be there on. It used to be on one of the social medias. You put down your favourite book, and I just always put Tintin in Tibet.
You've got such good taste. That was his favourite. You probably know this. That was Hergé's favourite as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
No, I didn't know that. That's awesome. It's got a Sasquatch in it as well. That's why.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. That's why it's your favourite. I thought you liked it for the great philosophical undertones and the exploration of kind of Buddhist theology, but it's the Sasquatch.
No, I've never read it. I just flick through and go straight to the Sasquatch and look at the pictures
every time. Well, it makes Tintin the only fictional character to have received the Light of Truth Award from the Dalai Lama. So this is like the best honour that the Dalai Lama can bestow, and it's to anyone who improves public understanding of Tibet, which is questionable if they did chuck a Sasquatch into the storyline. But yeah, the Dalai Lama gave Tintin this amazing Light of Truth.
Well, it's a Yeti, you know.
It's
a
Yeti.
Anna,
yeah,
it's a Yeti.
Yeah,
it's perfectly correct.
It is.
Tibet.
You're right.
And he's a good guy. Like, he saves them. So
Really?
I love it when that happens. Yeah, it's a great book.
Does the Dalai Lama believe in Yetis? Do you know, Dan? If anyone knows, you would know.
I would say so.
Yeah, so he has alluded to a belief. Unfortunately, the person he alluded that belief to was Brian Blessed, so I'm not sure if we can trust Brian's reporting. God. But when Brian was looking to climb to Mount Everest and obviously looking for Yetis along the way, he had an audience with the Dalai Lama, and he met him. They apparently did some boxing together. Brian took a walk with him in the wood. He saw him revive a headless dead snake back to life, and then they talked about Yetis, and he suggested that they are real. So,
Okay,
yeah.
that all
Headless dead snake back to life. What did he do? Just pick it up and wobble it. Look, it's back. It's back. Oh my God! You're just wobbling that. No, it's alive. It's alive again.
He was doing it like the thumb trick where you make it go, hey, look at that.
Well, here's the other thing too. I'll say about the hair, the haircut on Tintin. Think about when you do find your do. You know, when you're young or whatever, you may be in your 20s, you're playing with it, you're sorting something out, and you go, right, that's me. Quite often, not everybody, but a lot of people will keep that hairdo for their entire life. And so that kind of fits in when you think about that, because even when you lose your hair or it goes grey or whatever, you know, you go into your later stages of life, you've still got that same hairdo you had when you were in your early 20s.
That's a really good point.
There was a thing, wasn't there? There was a scientific paper written about Tintin, which was when the first book was written, he was supposed to be 14. And by the time the last book was written, he must have been about 60 because Hergé was writing them for so long. Right. But he was 60 years old, never had to shave. None of his hair's fallen out.
Yeah.
He's still got those boyish features. And according to these scientists, they reckon he suffered from hypopituitarism due to repeated blows to the head in some of the early books.
Oh, wow.
And does that
so
stop
he was-
you aging properly?
Yeah, it means you never go through puberty.
I see.
Nice.
Poor guy. He's got sort of an inverse to what most middle-aged men have, where he's bald all around the middle of his head, and then he's got just lots of hair in the middle. And I'm looking at James has actually brought a Tintin doll.
Oh, you have a Tintin, yes.
to this episode, another visual feature that will be lost on our audience.
It
But
looks like a mohawk from here.
it really does.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh no, he does have hair. Sorry, when you turn it round.
Yeah, he does.
It's just
Yeah.
from the front he looks bald.
I'll just say one final thing is that he really didn't like Tintin at the end, much the way that Arthur Conan Doyle got sick of his creation of Sherlock and he threw him off a cliff and
Off a
killed him.
waterfall.
Arguably, it's just a wet cliff, a waterfall, right?
Only because I went there a few weeks ago. To
Did you?
To the Reichenbach Falls, yeah.
Oh, right.
Would you say wet cliff is an accurate description?
So he really didn't like Tintin at the end, and he was quite sick of him. And so the final Tintin book that Hergé was working on up until the point of his death was a book called Tintin and Alf Art. And all we have is the sort of rough sketches of it, but the final pain that he got up to, the final bit of the story, was having Tintin covered in liquid polyester and being sold as a work of art. And that's the cliffhanger. We don't know what happened. Does he die? Does he survive? Tintin is like Woody from Toy Story, left on a cliffhanger. We'll never know.
So do you mean he was put in like a work of art, like a Damien Hirst kind of thing?
Yes.
Is that the idea?
Knowing
Exactly.
Tintin as I do, I would say he'd probably escape from that.
Yeah.
But his god might have turned him against that, right? Like Hergé was, who knows what he was going to do there. We just don't know. We don't know.
Rhys?
It's
Right at the end
interesting,
of it.
isn't it? Yeah, I will. It's interesting, isn't it? These people that play, also when you think of actors that play these characters that are so loved, and they get sick of them as well. I was just thinking of Harrison Ford with Han Solo.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, did he not like Hans by the
Well,
end?
he said he'll come back to Star Wars, but he wanted the characters to die, which
Is a
I think
spoiler.
he said that, but at least that's if you haven't seen that one. It came out a few years ago now. But and then the whole James Bond dying in that last Bond that Daniel Craig.
Oh, that's a bit more fresh.
It reminds me of that character Anna Karenina.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've... Stop the podcast.
Stop the podcast.
Hi, everyone. I hate big tech and I cannot lie.
Yeah, I hope you're going to wrap this whole advert.
I will, and you know what? If it accidentally gets edited out and you hear the normal advert, then that is the loss of the listener, because this week we are sponsored by ExpressVPN.
Yes, ExpressVPN is a service you can use if you are anxious about these big tech giants. How do you stop them from tracking your searches or your video history or everything you click on? The answer is ExpressVPN.
That's right. It's just one tap of a button on my phone and it's turned on, and that's all it takes to keep people out of my beeswax. So, if you don't like big tech tracking you and selling your personal data for profit, then go to expressvpn.com/fish. That's VPN, the letters. And if you go there right now, you can get 3 months of ExpressVPN for free.
So sign up now and go to expressvpn.com/fish and you will get an extra 3 months for free. And that's with a year-long purchase of an ExpressVPN subscription.
Boom, boom, ExpressVPN.
Okay, on with the show.
On with the podcast.
Okay, it is time for our final fact of the show, and that is my fact. My fact this week is that for over 50 years now, the author of A Nearly Complete History of the Moose in New Zealand has been looking for moose in New Zealand, despite there being no moose in New Zealand. Or is there?
Oh,
Yeah, exactly.
God.
Or is there?
Is there? No, there isn't.
Well, there could be.
There is.
Could there be?
There
All
could.
right, well, talk to us
Why
about...
would he not be looking?
Is it quite a short book? It sounds like there's not much to put in this book right now if there are no moose in New
Are
Zealand.
you kidding me? No, there's plenty in this book, and it's not his only book. He's written a bunch of books. He's written A Wild Moose Chase. This guy
That's
is a
good.
legend
Fairness.
of New Zealand. Yeah, I knew you'd like that, James. This is a man called Ken Tustin, and he has been in the national parks in New Zealand and Fiordland looking for moose because there was moose back in the 1920s, 30s when they were introduced.
And there's your clincher.
There's-
There was moose, so that it's not like, oh, he's going to look for fairies and I hope there's some there. You know, there was moose put there.
They'll all be dead by now, those ones. It's 100 years ago.
It's a little
no, but
thing
so-
called mating.
Oh, is there?
Yeah. Go down to the sea, get your toes wet, come and meet me on a wet cliff, mate.
Wow.
I'll blindfold
Okay.
you.
Is that someone blowing?
No, it's not. It's just the wind. All right, get your ID out. Show us your twerks. Here we go. And mating.
So this was okay. So I got the decade slightly wrong. This was in 1910, and what it was is that New Zealanders basically in 1910 wanted something to hunt, and they had no natural land mammals of that size, and so moose were introduced basically to rectify that. So initially, the moose really adapted well to the surroundings. But then red deer were introduced into the area, and that changed the whole food chain so much that by 1952, so there was a good, 40 odd years that they were around, the moose population really dwindled, and then basically by 1930 disappeared altogether. But then in 1952, one was caught on camera. So there's a 20 odd year period where people thought they were extinct, and then suddenly, boom, here's a moose. And that is why this guy says there may be more moose, because moose are really good at hiding.
Yes.
They are
No, they're not.
they are
They are.
they're really hard to see.
They're
moose.
huge.
Yeah, I know.
They got
but
big
actually,
antlers.
I know. But this is a huge national park. It's really hard to spot one.
it?
A moose could be standing in a field 100 yards away and you won't see it.
Wow. They get hit by cars a lot, don't they, moose? Like, that is a big problem in Canada.
And is that because of this invisibility that they can switch
Well, that
on and
must
off?
be, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they've got this mystical ability. They can stand still for a long time. And one of their Look, if you can just take this seriously, one of their, like a security measure.
Defense mechanisms?
There you go. Those are the terms. I knew you'd get there. Is to, quite a lot of animals use that where they just freeze.
Like the goats?
Thinking, and it's always, well, no, that's a different one. That's, but that, well, kind of. But that's a gene anomaly.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of some other animals that do the old freeze. A few
like
bugs.
A rabbit in headlights. They would
Rabbit
do
in
that.
headlights
And
is
mules,
one, but that's particularly...
mules do that, definitely, I think,
Yeah.
when
They just freeze when they can't deal with a
I
situation?
think so, yeah.
Like a possum, they would kind of pretend to be dead.
No,
That's
I think
kinda
all of the
similar.
examples you've given so far are incorrect.
Okay.
Well,
But
trying to help.
there are some bugs and things out there that will just... I think, okay, here's one, the stick insect, because I saw it yesterday.
Okay. And a frozen
Wait
stick
a minute.
insect.
So the thing is, I used to have pet stick insects as a child, and they never moved ever. It wasn't that as soon as they were in danger they stopped moving. They just stayed.
No, that's
still their
defense
whole life.
mechanism.
Oh, they were scared of me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had one on my steering wheel the other day. This is back in New Zealand when I was in the rural property, and I went to grab my steering wheel to drive as you do, and there's a sticky on there, and I went, oh come on mate, because my hands need to be there. He was in the 2 position because you go for 11 and 2.
It's the worst place.
And I grabbed the 11, and I always grab the left first. Grab the 11, go in for the 2. Oh, there's a sticky there, and I says to him, "Come on, mate." And he just honestly, I see him looking at me. I'm on the right hand side of him, no probs there, but he's not moving. And I come in slowly. And I even told him, coming in with the hand, buddy, coming in, because you're on my 2 position. And nothing, just absolutely frozen. So in the end, I just picked him up, and he made out like he was a stick the whole time. Come to think of it, it might have been a...
Poor stupid stick insect. Because I see what you're saying now. You're saying animals that are camouflaged to their environment freeze, but he's not a steering wheel insect. So it would be good if you could know as an animal that the thing you're sitting on
Yeah,
looks
it's not
nothing
what but you look nothing like it. Yeah, I mean chameleons, they're the other ones. The lizards in general will freeze or really dart away, but lizards are the ones that will freeze as a mechanism. So let's go back to what was your fact, Dan? What are we talking about?
Moose. We were talking about mooses.
Yes, right.
That's right. And so, hey, this is pretty cool. We wrote a book years ago, Rhys, where there was a New Zealand professor called Neil Gemmell who had gone to Loch Ness, and he had used a new form called eDNA to try and sample the waters of Loch Ness to see if the monster may exist. And so eDNA seems like quite an obvious thing that you would use in order to try and find the moose, because you could go there, and if the moose had been, let's say, around a little stream or a pond, and if it had been sipping from it in the last 21 days, Neil would be able to use this device to then take extracts out and say, there's moose DNA in there. That means they're alive. Yeah. So I actually DM'd him on Twitter, and I asked him, is this a thing? Would you be up for doing it? And he said, it's so weird. I actually met Ken. I met this guy who's been looking for moose. Wow. Yeah. And he met him when he went back to Loch Ness to deliver the results of his findings about the water that he took from Loch Ness. And Ken happened to be there on holiday, and they met at Loch Ness to then discuss looking for the moose.
Actually, I'm acting like it's a massive coincidence, but where is Ken going to holiday? It's obviously going to be Loch Ness, isn't it?
Where are these 2 nutters that you've happened to have heard of going to see each other?
How dare you?
So is he going to do it?
Well, he talks about it. So he said, what did he say? He said, Ken and I have kept in touch, and the plan was to jump on board with him next time he found some sign of moose. But there's been little found in the past few years. Still remains a possibility. We've surveyed quite large sections of Fjordland and do reasonably broad biodiversity surveys, setting baselines and looking for various things. Endangered birds, some species that are presumed to be extinct, and of course moose. So far, there is no evidence of those. However, there's been a hugely exciting thing for Ken that happened in 2020, which is that a kid, well, I say kid, he's a teenager, and when I say teenager, he's in his 20s, and he was on a flight. He was a guy called Ben Young, who was in a helicopter flying over Fjordland doing some surveying, and he saw a moose. He saw the moose. Now, here's the thing. Here's the thing. He's a Canadian who used to work with moose.
There you go.
He knows what a moose looks
We all
like.
know what a moose looks like, Dan.
No,
No,
but
but Canadians really know. Canadians really know.
Yeah.
he was specifically a former moose hunting guide in Canada.
I
There
still...
you go. Listen, James, he would really know.
Reese, you're the one who
Okay.
just told us a Canadian could be standing 100 feet from a moose in a plain meadow and not see it. So
There you go.
Yeah, normally, but this guy was a trained moose
yeah,
looker, wasn't he?
he's a trained moose looker.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I have
worked
to
with
say,
moose.
it's not. It obviously is not the maddest idea. They were there, like you say. It is a big place,
Yeah.
and sometimes these things come to fruition. So there's another really great Kiwi animal in New Zealand, the takahe, which I think are pretty rare. I doubt. Have you seen takahe? I think they're quite rare, aren't they, Rhys?
Yes, they're rare.
Nice,
for sure.
nice looking, very nice looking birds though.
What kind of... Oh, birds.
Yeah, they're the largest bird in like the rail family, so like coots and moorhens, but much bigger. Very beautiful blue-green feathers, huge red beak that goes all the way up over their foreheads. They can't fly, but anyway, we thought the takahe was extinct by about 1900. So I think the first sighting by Europeans was 1849. Obviously, the Europeans captured it, roasted it, ate it. They sort of went quite quickly extinct. And then there's a guy called Geoffrey Orbell, who, when he was a kid, his mum just showed him a picture of one, I think, in a childhood book. And he got a hunch as a child. I bet that's still out there. And he spent his life kind of reading up on them. And he was a doctor. I think he was an eye doctor. So he was had a job.
Well, he knew how eyes work, so he'd be perfect for
Exactly.
looking for things.
He knows how they really work, James.
He could
He
really
really
see.
knows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he took his expert eyes out on this 1948 expedition, and they went up this mountain, and these things haven't been seen for 50 years, and they sat by a little bit of water, and two of them just walked straight into their nets. These lovely little
Boom.
birds
Wow.
waddled in,
Wow.
and we discovered, and now they have them. I think they're only about 300. They're very unusual, but
Yeah, they're very endangered.
Yeah.
But look, there you go. I mean, that's
can
just one
happen.
example of how animals, and don't forget, the more intelligent they are, they know we're around. They know that they're endangered. There's only a small group of them, and they hide and they worry, and their survival instinct is their main feature. And so they are doing whatever it can take, because otherwise they could be caught, they could be shot. We only think it from a human capacity of how would we hide, how would we stay alive? But we're nowhere near as good as animals in the natural environment of the forest at staying alive.
yeah, you're right. A
Yeah.
moose, that's ingrained in its system, isn't it? Get away.
Just back to the Fjordlands very quickly. I just want to give a quick shout out to a legend of the world of ornithology. He was part of the Ornithological Society of New Zealand, joined in 1957, a guy called Ron Jack Nilsson, who very sadly passed away October 26, 2022. He was a legend of his field, and he spent, much like Ken, many, many years looking for an elusive, supposedly extinct species of bird, which are called the South Island kokako. Have you heard of that, Rhys? The South Island kokako?
Oh, yeah, we
It's
found
a-
those this year.
In November, wasn't it?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, it was the 1st of November last year. Yeah. When did he die?
October 26th.
Oh, no.
Oh, God, that is a
So
bummer to hear.
close, yeah.
But
They-
no, seriously, what? How do you spell the bird name?
K-O with a line above the K,
Yeah.
the O, sorry. K-A-K-O. So kokako.
Kokako.
And it's a bird that hasn't been seen for many, many years. People occasionally have supposed sightings, but no one has properly confirmed it. No one has a photo. And if anyone in New Zealand in that region is listening, there is, at least there was when this paper was written, a $10,000 reward for any photographic proof of the South Island kokako.
There's quite a lot of money to be made, isn't there, if you can find these things that don't exist?
It's not the
fair
easiest
enough.
way, probably, to pull in a reliable salary. If you tell your partner, I'm going to quit my job because I've heard lots of money to be made.
You're nagging me too much. I'm going to get my books and I'm going to go and find the Coca-Cola.
Okay, hon. I'll see you
The
at dinner.
age-old story.
Okay, that is it. That is all of our facts. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to get in contact with any of us about the things that we have said over the course of this podcast, we can all be found on our Twitter accounts. I'm on @Schreiberland. James?
@JamesHarkin.
Rhys?
Please don't contact me. I think I said this last time. I haven't got time to read all your messages.
And Anna?
You can email podcast@qi.com.
Yep, or you can go to our group account, which is @NoSuchThing, or our website, nosuchthingasafish.com. All of our previous episodes are there. Do check them out, but most importantly, go and watch the entire series of Our Flag Means Death, Rhys's brilliant pirate sitcom. The entire series is up now to watch on the BBC iPlayer. It's an absolutely awesome series. Rhys, thank you so much for being here, and for the rest of you, we'll be back again next week with another episode. We'll see you then. Goodbye.